Coming up on Network Africa. Kenyans paid their last respects to former President Daniel Moi. Mali's President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta seeks dialogue with jihadist insurgents. Plus, the UN Food and Agricultural Organization says it has gotten almost 30% of its $76 million appeal to combat the locust upsurge in East Africa. Thanks for joining us on the program. I'm Teniola Shobowale. Sudan's rulers are to hand over former President Omar al-Bashir to the International Criminal Court. The former president faces charges of genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity over the conflicts that broke out in the country's Darfur region in 2003. He was ousted as president in April 2019. He came to power in a military coup in 1989 and ruled Sudan with an iron fist. ICC prosecutors in The Hague have requested a stand trial over the Darfur killings. The UN says that around 300,000 people were killed and 2.5 million were displaced in the war. In December last year, Bashir was sentenced to 2 years in a social reform facility for corruption. Prosecutors in Sudan have also charged him with the killing of protesters during the demonstrations that led to him being ousted. So the story is now the state funeral of Kenya's former president Daniel Moi has ended and his body is being taken back to the mortuary. It will stay at the Lee Funeral Home overnight, then be flown to Mr. Moi's home in Kabarak on Wednesday morning. Mourners will congregate at Kabarak School near the former president's home, where only few close family members will be allowed inside. Thousands are expected to follow the burial proceedings through giant television screens that have been mounted at Nakuru County Afra Stadium. Meanwhile, current and former heads of state who attended former President Daniel Moi's state funeral have paid their respects to the man who ruled Kenya for 24 years. Nigeria's Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni, Rwanda's Paul Kagame, South Sudan's Salva Kiir, and Ethiopia's Sahle Work Zewde were among the leaders who were at the Nyayo National Stadium. Nigeria's Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, called former President Arap Moi a great African patriot and one of the foremost leaders of the decolonization of Africa. He will be remembered in particular for his pioneering work on regional cooperation. Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni also called him a patriot who was keen on the East African Federation. He said, "One quality I saw in Mr. Moi was that he was a patriot." He also wanted the East African Federation, not just politically, but even emotionally. You could see that he loved East Africa. South Sudan's President Salva Kiir paid tribute to Arap Moi's key role in his country's independence and freedom. After serving as president, Mr. Moi was later appointed as a peace envoy to Sudan. President Kiir described Mr. Moi as an icon of peace, saying South Sudan is the product of his work and will remain in his legacy. Kenyans from all walks of life started streaming into the stadium as early as 5 a.m. to pay their final respects to the former president who died last week at the age of 95. Joining us now is Kenyan journalist Abby Agina to speak to us on today's ceremony. Abby, the D-Day has finally come and gone. Tell us about today's ceremony. I imagine it's been quite a day. Kenyans are finally saying goodbye.
Thank you so much. It has been a very momentous occasion today at the Nyayo National Stadium, with many Kenyans coming in as early as 2 a.m. to mourn the fallen president, Daniel Arap Moi. So far, we do know that a huge number of Kenyans turned out. It is impossible to estimate how many there were in numbers, but the country is in the final stages of this national mourning of a man who has been receiving tribute from different African leaders, and that is Daniel Arap Moi. For now, we do know that the body has been taken in at the Lee Funeral Home, where the body will be spending the night. Then tomorrow, the body will be airlifted to his Kabarak home, which is in North Rift, Kenya. A lot of mourners are also expected at that side of this particular ceremony that will be graced again by various leaders from the region.
You mentioned, a lot of Kenyans from all walks of life came out to, pay their last respect. But we also saw a lot of African leaders who paid tribute to Mr. Moi, calling him a patriot. But many Kenyans seem to have a love and hate relationship for Moi. But what legacy will he be remembered for the most?
Actually, majority of Kenyans believe that President late will actually be remembered specifically for making sure that Kenya enjoys peace and unity. The country served under a 24-year rule, which was not characterized by any civil war. And he will be credited for being a leader who, of course, held the country together, even when our neighboring countries like Uganda faced military coups. When you look at other countries in the Democratic Republic of Congo. So for President Moi, he continues to hold the legacy of a man who ensured that Kenya was the beacon of stability, Kenya was the beacon of hope for the region. And of course, a lot of the leaders also at the particular ceremony did describe Moi as a leader who was very he was actually a patriot for the region. He epitomized the true calling of African statesmanship. That is one of the biggest legacies that he will be remembered for as people continue to mourn his death.
All right, then, Abby, thank you so much for your reporting.